people tell us that the Bible is the pure Word of God. And they say we should turn away from the Quran, we should go to the Bible. And my promise to you is that as you read the Quran, you will find a world of difference. But it is possible that some people are not familiar with the Bible. I often think that when people like Sam come up here and they preach to us that the Bible is 100% the Word of God, they're not quite familiar with the Bible.
So we decided to set up an experiment. We have purchased the Bible and disguised it as a Holy Quran. We then highlighted a couple of shocking verses that are in great contrast with our Western norms and values.
So here we have the Quran, which is basically the Muslims' Holy Bible, and this is thought to be the main intent behind terrorist attacks. We would like to read a few random passages from the Quran and see if you agree.
Okay.
If you abhor my laws and reject my commands, you will have to eat the flesh of your own daughters and your own sons. I do not allow for a woman to teach. If she does, you will have to cut off her hand and do not forgive her. If two men sleep together, you will have to kill them. You think there's any violence in here?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at that in correlation with what's happening in the Middle East, you have innocent people getting their heads cut off and babies being thrown off roofs and people starting fires for no reason. It's absolutely ridiculous. I think some stupid religion like this definitely doesn't belong in our Western culture.
If you were to compare this to the Holy Bible, what do you think the biggest difference is?
The Holy Bible doesn't promote violence and terrible acts like that. There's no way.
Telling them to like cut off their hands and just kill them if they're not like.
Okay, well we actually have a surprise for you today. See, this is actually not the Holy Quran. This is actually the Holy Bible.
You're kidding, right? You're kidding, right?
That's the Holy Bible.
Right.
Why would that be in the Holy Bible?
Does this surprise you?
Yes, 100%, because you would never think terrible stuff like that would be in the Holy Bible.
That's ridiculous. There's no way that's the Bible. I've read the Bible. That's definitely not it.
Actually, Holy Bible.
No.
Anna Pulley of Alternet has up a great article about some of the freakiest Bible verses about sex, and it's even weirder than you think. So first we go to Ezekiel 16:17. It says, quote, "You also took the fine jewelry I gave you, the jewelry made of my gold and silver, and you made for yourself male idols and engaged in prostitution with them." Now we move on to Deuteronomy 25, lines 11 through 12, and it says, quote, "If two men, a man and his countryman, are struggling together, and the wife of one comes near to deliver her husband from the hand of the one who is striking him, and puts out her hand and seizes his genitals, then you shall cut off her hand. You shall not show pity." All right, now we move to Ezekiel 23, lines 18 to 21. In this one, take note of the vivid descriptions. Quote, "When she carried on her whoring so openly and flaunted her nakedness, I turned in disgust from her, as I had turned in disgust from her sister. Yet she increased her whoring, remembering the days of her youth, when she played the whore in the land of Egypt and lusted after her lovers there, whose members were like those of donkeys, and whose issue was like that of horses. Thus you long for the lewdness of your youth, when the Egyptians handled your bosom and pressed your younger breasts."
I would like to point out to you that in fact, if a book describes history by gratuitously including sexual imagery, those parts of that book cannot be the Word of God. And I would say that the Bible often does this. And one place in which it does this, and I'd have Sam read that out for you, is in the book of Ezekiel, in chapter 23. So I would ask Sam, as he's asked me a few questions, I would ask Sam, when he comes up here next time, to read for us from Ezekiel chapter 23, starting with verse number 1, going all the way to verse number 21. And if not that much, then start from verse 11. And if he doesn't have time for that much, start from, just read verses 20 and 21. Will be okay. And in fact, why don't you read us from this children's Bible?
Sure.
So that folks can be sure what is there in the children's Bible. Young Explorer's Bible, New International Version, I'll leave that with you. It'll be here when you come back. Just read for us from that. So now, in sum, folks, how much time do I have?
1 minute.
1 minute. In sum, what I've shown, in fact, is that although the Quran speaks very positively about the Bible, it also tells us where the Bible has gone wrong. But on the whole, the Quran gives us a very positive way of looking at the Bible. The Quran is not here to condemn the Bible, but the Quran is here to introduce light. You do not introduce light by driving away the darkness, but you introduce light by turning on the switch. And this is what the
Now
Quran
he
does.
asked me to read Ezekiel 23, verse 20 to 21. Ezekiel 23, verse 20 to 21. There she lusted after her lavers, whose genitals were like those of donkeys, and whose emissions was like that of horses.
Why don't you read this from this children's Bible?
Whose genitals were like those of donkeys, and whose emissions was like that of horses. So you longed for the lewdness of your youth, when in Egypt your bosom was caressed and your young breast fondled. Whose genitals were like those of donkeys, and whose emissions was like that of horses.